In the Midwest here, we always used to say that people from New York were as American as it possibly gets. With bin Laden wanted on the run for terrible acts, brave men in the Navy were going through the hardest training possible to learn how to catch him and all the people working with him. And these brave men definitely do the job. However, being a leader of brave men is even a harder thing to do, making even more difficult decisions, how they're going to affect everybody, including the men that you care about and you're in charge of. Michael Murphy has gone above and beyond even this could be comprehended. Man of selfless valor, true sacrifice. And this is his story. Michael Murphy was born May 7th, 1976, in Smithtown, New York. He would spend most of his childhood growing up in Suffolk County. Michael's father, Daniel Murphy, was a former assistant Suffolk County district attorney and a wounded veteran of the Vietnam War. Growing up like most kids, he was very active in playing sports, whether it be soccer, pee-wee football. His father was always actively in his life, coaching, and he often took a summer job being a lifeguard at Brookhaven Town Beach in Lake Ronkonkoma, New York. He would go there every summer throughout his college years as well. He was known to his friends as Murph, or as the Protector, in his high school years. In 8th grade, he protected a child with special needs who was being shoved and bullied into a locker by a group of boys, ending with Murphy physically pulling the attackers away from the child. This was the only time the school notified Murphy's parents of any behavioral or disciplinary issues. Michael was a young man with a good heart. Later in life, he also protected a homeless man who was being attacked while collecting cans. He chased away the attackers and helped the old man pick up these cans. His parents often mention this and say they couldn't have been more proud. In 1994, Murphy graduated from Atchison Medford High School and left to attend Pennsylvania State University. He would graduate in the year 1998 with a double major in political science and psychology. He was engaged to his college sweetheart, Heather Dugan, and their wedding was scheduled for November of 2005. After he'd graduated from Penn State, Murphy applied and was accepted to several different law schools, but decided to attend SEAL mentoring sessions at the United States Merchant Marine Academy. In September 2000, he accepted an appointment to the United States Navy Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida. On December 13th of that year, he was commissioned as an ensign in the Navy and began basic underwater demolition SEAL training in Coronado, California. In January of 2001, eventually graduating with Class 236 in November of 2001. After he had graduated from BUD/S, he attended the United States Airborne School, SQT or SEAL Qualification Training, and SEAL Delivery Vehicles, SDV School. Murphy earned his SEAL Trident, checked on board SDV Team 1 in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii in July of 2002. In October of 2002, he deployed with Foxtrot Platoon to Jordan as the liaison officer for Exercise Early Victor. SEAL Delivery Vehicle, or SDV. It's a small submersible craft able to be piloted by a crew of Navy SEALs. These are used if they have to infiltrate and go long distances, transport equipment, and of course Navy SEALs. United States Navy SEALs, Naval Special Warfare, have been using these crafts since 1983. Typically, they are deployed from a dry deck on a submarine. However, they have been deployed from surface by crane as well. Different models vary, size, weight distribution, how many passengers they can hold depending on the mission. Some SDVs are flooded, whereas the chamber inside is filled with water and they're actually hooked up to the oxygen of the SDV or their own tanks. Newer models have a complete dry area pressurized per cabin. Lieutenant Murphy had a true admiration for the first responders that responded to the World Trade Center in 9/11. He had known somebody that worked in the fire department as well as two people who had passed in the rubble that terrible day. for honoring these people that were in first responders, he would wear the New York Fire Department number 53 patch on his uniform. Murphy had even ordered other patches for everybody else in his unit to wear as well. As a proven leader who earned the trust and respect of all the men he commanded, Murphy was never too good for anybody. He had those natural leadership abilities, always trying to make sure that the men could be the best SEALs that they could be. Murphy would never give orders for something he wouldn't do, and most of the time he would always be down there with the men that he commanded to do so. For PT, they would all put on their plate carriers and do an assortment of exercises to be better, which would be called the Murphy. July of 2002 to October 2002, Murphy had deployed with Foxtrot Platoon to Jordan. He was the liaison officer for Exercise Early Victor. Following this tour with the SDVT Team 1, Murphy was assigned to Special Operations Command Central and deployed to Qatar in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. After returning stateside from Qatar, he again was deployed to Djibouti to assist in the operational planning of Super SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team mission. Special Operations Command Central is a sub-unified command of the U.S. Central Command. They're responsible for planning special operations throughout the area of responsibility, planning and conducting peacetime joint combined special operations training exercises, and orchestrating command and control of peacetime and wartime special operations as directed. In early 2005, Murphy was assigned to SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 and an officer in charge of Alpha Platoon deployed to Afghanistan. Standard issued rifle for the Navy SEALs back in Michael Murphy's time was the M4A1. The rifle had been in use since 1994, however, it was becoming more and more popular amongst all the different departments of defense. Since its adoption in 1994, the M4 has undergone 90 different modifications to improve its adaptability, ergonomics, and modularity. The rifle featured a toggle where you could go from burst fire option or to fully automatic. A railing system, so it was adaptable to have the M203 grenade launcher or the M320 grenade launcher, as well as Master Key and the M26 mass shotguns. The sidearm that Michael Murphy used was the P226 or the MK25. Chambered in 9x19 NATO, developed in 1983 and has been in service since. Holds magazines of up to 40 rounds depending on which magazine and caliber. Murphy's M4A1 had 203 grenade launcher attached as well as camouflage spray paint. After 9/11, with the war on terror in Afghanistan, the United States was pursuing insurgent leaders, Taliban warlords, or any resistance. The Taliban was responsible for harboring al-Qaeda terrorist agents, and there was intel that some heavy hitters for the Taliban were hiding out in the Kunar province of Korengal Valley, a rough mountainous region at the foot of the Hindu Kush. The main person in particular looking for was Ahmed Shah, codenamed Ben Shimrak, who was commanding a group of insurgents known as the Mountain Tigers, west of Asadabad. His location, near Pakistan, possibly even in Pakistan. However, they needed reconnaissance teams to go find out, and that was how Operation Red Wing began. The 3-3 Marines were holding down the Kunar province pretty well. They've gotten rid of a bunch of bad guys, and there was parliamentary elections that were going to take place in that area. And they wanted to make sure there was no opposition, militias, or any negative violence that would interfere with it. The elections would be taking place in September of 2005. However, the 3-3's rotation out and the 2-3 would be taking over. There was a minor Islamic fundamentalist named Ahmed Shah who was linked up with some bad dudes supposedly. However, he didn't really have as large of a militia as everybody would like to believe. However, based off the intel, the 3-3 rotated out, and the 2-3 Marines took place. They were in need of assets, and the only helicopters they could get would be for naval special warfare, which is where Murphy stepped in. Operation Red Wing had some issues from the very beginning that kind of domino effect down to the chaos and the tragedy that we know. Let's get into it. Operation Red Wing was to be executed in 5-phase setup by the United States Marine Corps originally. Phase 1 would be shaping a U.S. Navy SEAL reconnaissance and surveillance team would insert into the region suspected of safe buildings with Ahmed Shah, observe, identify Shah and his men in specific locations, guide direct action teams of Phase 2 to the structures in which him and his men are staying. Phase 2 action on the objective. A SEAL Direct Action team being inserted by MH-47, followed shortly by the Marines to capture or kill Shah and his men. Phase 3, Outer Cordon. The Marines, along with the Afghan National Army soldiers, are to sweep the surrounding valleys for other suspected insurgents. Phase 4, Security and Stabilization. After the first 3 phases, U.S. Marines, Afghan National Army soldiers, and Naval corpsmen will provide medical care to the local population. Stage 5, Exploration. Depending on alien activity, the Marines will remain in the area for up to a month, then depart once stable. SEAL Team 10 was in charge of the counterinsurgent special reconnaissance aspect, or Phase 1, of Operation Red Wings. Lieutenant Murphy would have a team of 4 men, including himself, Marcus Luttrell, who was the corpsman of the operation, Matthew Axelson, the sniper Overwatch, and Danny Dietz, who would run the communication and relay. They would fast rope from helicopters June 28, 2005, using the cover of night for stealth to infiltrate. They'd have multiple choppers flying around as to confuse the enemy as to where they were deploying. And they would march about 6 miles on foot with special reconnaissance, receive information, and update the rest of the operation. There would be a squad of SEALs and a quick reactionary force in case there were some issues or the mission needed to be objected and get them extracted from that point. Aside from the men to the left, to the right with rifles, communications is key to run a smooth operation and be successful. The Hindu Kush mountain range is unforgiving, rural, no reception, especially back in the early 2000s before communication devices really progressed in. If you're a foreign force fighting in a foreign country against people who know the land and have the advantage and the upper hand, communication would be key. Unfortunately, that was something overlooked before they progressed and began the operation. Carrying, higher frequency radios and transmitters is extra weight when you have to hike, climb 6 miles to get to your target zone where you're surveying and doing the reconnaissance mission. Every pound counts. Special operations units or any conventional warfare even. Communication every so often is key. Lieutenant Murphy, Axelson, Luttrell, and Dietz would be backed up with a QRF, Quick Response Force, of the 160 SOAR Night Stalkers. The elite Army pilots of helicopters, Chinooks, Apaches, Little Birds, Black Hawks, you name it. The most elite force of pilots on the planet. Who specialize in stealth. Most of their operations are done during the nighttime. If it's a rough area and there's a medevac need be, 160th are the ones to go to. The on-the-ground QRF team members would be 8 members of SEAL Team 10. They would remain on standby with tight communications and ready to roll out at the drop of a dime if need be. June 28, 2005, Murphy's team would be helicoptered in the Peck District on the mountain Chateau Sar. They would have decoy helicopters fly around and make multiple stops to make it look like they were dropping people in different areas to confuse the enemy. From there, they would hike 6 miles until they were to their surveillance target zone. Axelson and Luttrell would snipe, while Murphy and Dietz would spot for them. While gathering intel for the reconnaissance, some goat herders compromised their position. Due to their presence being compromised, Murphy had made the decision to abort the operation. At this point, it was not worth the risk. They were in need of being extracted, however, their comms were down due to the location. They decided to continue moving forward to a different summit where perhaps satellite phone would work. However, stepping right into an ambush. As Murphy, Dietz, and Luttrell were heading back to the extraction point, they continued to contact command using their satellite phone as well as the radios. However, they were at no such luck and the reception was horrible. While venturing to the next ridge, they stepped into an ambush. The SEALs were engaged in a heavy firefight, multiple wounded. In the last-ditch attempt for Murphy to save his men, he crawled out to an opening with an exposed area to use the radio to try to contact again in his last words. Lieutenant Murphy continued the fight. According to Marcus Luttrell's account, an RPG had hit the men and they had all been separated from the blast. The quick reaction force was stalled and delayed. By the time they had made it to the site, somebody had shot another RPG and took down a Chinook, carrying 8 of the men from the 160 SOAR and 8 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 10. A rescue team of Army Rangers and Marines were dispatched to recover and try to find if there were any survivors of the incident. July 2nd, they located Murphy's body as well as Danny Dietz, both on the mountainside, stripped of their personal belongings. Taliban footage of this recorded was later found. Marcus Luttrell was found unprotected by an Afghani timber worker named Mohammed Golub, and they recovered all 16 bodies of the dead Chinook helicopter pilot and crew, as well as the Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 10. The body of Matthew Axelson wasn't retrieved until July 10th. From the signs of his body, it looked as though he had just barely died, maybe 2 days tops at most. He fought for another few days till the end. The Rangers that found him stated it looked as though he's about 2 miles away from everyone else. Lieutenant Michael Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously for going above the call of duty, making that call to try to protect and save his men. He's the first to receive the Medal of Honor during the Global War on Terror theater in Afghanistan. The award was presented to his parents by President George W. Bush. Matthew Axelson, Danny Dietz, and Marcus Luttrell would all receive the highest honor of the Navy, with the Navy Cross. There would be buildings, highways, parks, museums, and all sorts of other memorials dedicated to all of these brave men. Forever will he be known as Lieutenant Michael Murphy, to his friends Murph the Protector, and to his family a son. Thank you for your service.